On Real Estate for Real Life podcasts, we sit down with standout business leaders to unpack what's actually working.
How they scale, lead teams, win clients, and build businesses that last. We're your hosts. I'm Courtney Gouchman.
And I'm Ryan Wilson. Thanks for tuning in.
We're back, and we finally brought the co-host, Ryan Wilson, back with us.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, he's been on a hiatus a little bit, but he's back in action, and we have another wonderful guest with us.
We're excited that my old friend, Jess Riehl, owner of Riehl Consulting, is here with us today. Thanks for joining us, Jess.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we were pumped to have you.
Great.
So Jess is a longtime friend, and I met Jess probably about 14 years ago when she was working in sales at a disaster restoration company.
That is
So
correct.
that is how the journey, at least when I was a part of it, started.
Yeah.
So
That's where basically her life started,
That's
right? Is
pretty
when
much-
she met Ryan Wilson.
For you, I don't really remember much.
right,
Yeah.
it must have been boring. I'll tell you that right now.
Very boring.
Yeah.
So that really starts off everything, I think, that year, 14
Beautiful.
years ago.
So
That was
give
when you
us-
really started living.
Yeah, exactly. It's right. It's true. It's true.
So, tell us a little bit about, so obviously you're incredibly successful. You've had an unbelievable career path, and you started in a C-suite role very early on in your career, and now you own your own business. For 5 years you've been open, Riehl Consulting.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that path, how you got to where you are now, what led you to the confidence to be able to open up your own company and kind of take on unique businesses and be able to give them some coaching.
Yeah. Okay, so where to start? Obviously, when I met you. So I was working in a sales position at a business that did disaster restoration. So basically, if a building had a fire or a flood, this business would come in and do the cleanup and then the rebuild. So who I was, quote unquote, selling to was property management companies, commercial real estate, anybody that had a property that might have a loss, right? So all about building relationships, long sales cycle. I ended up becoming really close with the owner of the business because he was heavily involved in sales, but he wasn't my direct, I wasn't his direct report. So we were able to have a unique relationship in that sense. So we would go and meet with clients, do events together, all of that. Fast forward, I ended up getting into leadership on the sales side and ultimately joined the management team. So on the management team was when I first got to see the owner of the business in action on the operations side. And I remember after in my first management meeting, we were walking to lunch. He's like, so what'd you think? I'm like, everyone's so afraid of you. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, it feels like a lot of fear in that room, And he was kind of taken back by it, but we had a great conversation. Fast forward, we ended up having a bunch of turnover at the general manager position. And so we had outside consultants, everyone trying to figure out kind of how to solve that problem. And the consultants told him that they basically thought I was the only person that could do the job because I was the only one that would tell him the truth. And so he came to me. He's like, so what do you think? You want to take on this role? I was like, well, usually people don't stick around if they do that. So I don't know if I want to. And but we had a great conversation, kind of like how we would do it differently. So I took on the role of COO at the business. And for anyone in business, when the operations team hears that the head of sales is now going to run the whole business, there's some concerns, right? Because sales and ops, there's always a healthy tension there. But it worked out really well because I think we were yin and yang a little bit, right? And so his strengths and weaknesses were the opposite of mine. So the partnership worked. So go ahead.
So you went into sales. So you went from sales.
Yep.
You're meeting with clients to then running the business with the owner of the company. What sort of things, or was it just innate in you that you had that skill of being able to connect with people and be honest with people? What sort of skills did you have to learn, and what sort of skills did you naturally have to kind of step into that role?
It's a great question. And I looked at it as where I was selling to clients and external. It's now you have to sell internally, right? So now you are trying to build those relationships with the team and different leaders within the organization. And it's really just talking to people and listening. I think there's so much value in curiosity, right? Like just being curious about why things work the way they do. And so when I first took on the role, I went and met with everybody at the company, no matter what the position, and just asked them the same set of questions, right? Like, what do you like? What don't you like? What would you fix if you were in leadership? Like, what is the thing that gets in your way the most? And we just learned so much from that, and also learned that people that are in it have the answers, right? Like, they're in it, and leadership is limited on the visibility that they have. And so if you don't go down and ask the questions, you don't get the information of what's really happening there. So we took that and implemented a bunch and just started the conversations and really put the owner in a position where he got to be, he was so brilliant, and like he had such a clear vision, and what would happen is like his intention was always really good, but the impact wouldn't really align with what he was after, right? And so that's where I would come in and he'd give me the difficult feedback and be like, why aren't we doing this? Why isn't this happening? And I could communicate it in a way to get the results we want.
Right. So obviously his delivery, he wasn't as tactful. You had the ability to do that. I also think what's really interesting is, I mean, there's a similarity here, right? Like I was in sales and I'm now in operations on the operations side of things. I can speak from personal experience that I think that's one of the most amazing gifts that you can bring to an organization is to actually understand the operations that support the sales team.
Totally.
Right? Because your sales team is ultimately the team that's bringing in the numbers, bringing in the revenue. But if you don't understand the inner workings and you are truly ops minded, you're going to really struggle with making operational systems that actually support the salespeople. So I think that that's one of the biggest gifts that you brought there. Yeah. And I think another thing that's interesting too is early on in your career, you worked with consultants.
Yep.
Which is now ironically
exactly
like the direction you ended up going. So it's kind of cool. And if it weren't for those consultants, you probably wouldn't have ended up in that COO position, just simply because of the fact that it is a unique transition to go from sales to operations.
Totally. And at that point, I think the consultant role is just, it's a fresh view, right? Like you hear things without the biases of what's happening within the business, and you look at it from like, what's best for this business, not what might make sense in terms of how the people feel that are in it every day, and kind of blinded by that. But I think, to your point about the sales and operations and bridging that gap is just like a really good example in any business where there's a rub, right? And if you don't deal with the rub, you can have a lot of issues. You can have the tension of sales is over-promising and we can't do this, and they're not managing expectations with the clients. And then you have sales being like, operations isn't delivering on the promise that we made, and the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? And if you can go into a conversation with curiosity versus like, I am right and I need to prove to you, right? Like if people went into conversations with this mindset of what can I learn instead of what can I prove, it shifts everything, right?
Yeah.
And so going into the sales team after I took on this role as COO, I remember doing this exercise with them because after I'd gathered feedback from operations, their operations was feeling like, well, we do this all the time and they get a loss and come in and they call us like it's an emergency, right? And there's no way to, they don't trust us that we know what we're doing. And like the intention of the salesperson isn't to make the ops feel like they're doubting them. It's just their energy's high, right? They've been waiting. They've worked so hard to cultivate this relationship. They've worked so hard to get the phone to ring. So when it does, they have this emotion, right? And like when your emotions are high, your logic and reason tend to plummet. So like we're panicked. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And ops is like, ugh. And then sales is like, why don't they take this seriously? And so talking to the sales group, I'm like, do you have that person in your life where when the phone rings, you like look at it and you're like, oof, I don't want to pick this up. And everyone's like, yes. I'm like, so that's how everyone feels about you guys. And they're like, I'm like, but seriously, you have to think about like, what's the result you're looking for when you call people? You don't want them to be like, ugh, I don't want to pick up this call. You want them to say, how can I help them? And like, what are you doing in every other moment before the moment you have a loss come in to build that relationship? Yeah. Right. And so those types of conversations I saw shift the culture, right? It was like everyone started to collaborate. And I think this thought that, you have to solve all the problems in the business, that's not it. You're never going to, right? There's always going to be issues, but you need to have people that have the skills that can work through them, right? That hold each other accountable in a way that get you the results you want without hurting people's feelings or egos along the way.
That's brilliant. So you transferred a lot of stuff there. Like
Yeah.
you went from having these fear-based meetings, which now you're taking charge of, to kind of deliver the message from the visionary in the proper way.
Yeah.
You also simultaneously had the sales organization collaborating more in getting in relationship with the operations team to create a, more succinct environment, better culture, all of that. How long, so when that starts, which you started immediately, I'm sure, by taking that COO role, how long does it then take to start seeing those results in the numbers? Because let's be honest, a big business like that, which I know sold for a lot, the numbers really run everything.
Yeah.
So, and that's what your boss is looking for.
Exactly.
How long does it take for those numbers to come through with that?
It's a great question. And I think the results can take quite a bit of time, but there's like indicators along the way to measure that we're moving in the right direction, right? Like this idea that if nothing changes, nothing changes. Like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. That was the owner of that company's favorite thing to say. But it's true, right? It's like, what behavioral changes are we going to make to get a different result? And I think that, if you can point to these are the behavioral changes we're making and monitor those, then the results follow. But you have to be really clear that this is the result we want, and there's a different path to get there, right? Which kind of goes back to the owner that I worked with. He and I were so aligned in terms of the direction of the company, but we had completely different approaches in terms of how to get the people to do the thing. And so it's figuring out who would respond best to him, who responded best to my approach, and understanding that it's actually not about who's right or wrong, but it's what's the result that we're going to get.
Yeah.
And so I think, Ryan, your question about how long does it take to see the results is on every owner's mind, right? It's like, if I invest in something, I better get the ROI out of it. And like, if you don't have a way to show that it's moving in a direction, then it's easy to kind of abandon that approach and be like, we have to try something else. And so I think it's on the people that are trying to push an initiative or try to implement something new to really provide visibility to the owner of the business or the CEO or the executive team of like, these are the things we're doing every day. And so they have the confidence that like, okay, they're looking at this, right? Because I'm sure you have been in the position where something's implemented and you're like, I wonder what's happening with that, right? And like, if people aren't giving you updates, then you're left to your own assumptions. And there's so much risk in that, right?
And if you could see the incremental change, small things compounding, we all know that, they're going to compound and create the much bigger effect.
Exactly.
That's really impressive. So tell us how that kind of journey
kept
on going and
So
where it ended up.
Yeah. So we had a ton of success, and we ended up being the largest privately owned restoration company in New England. So we had seven offices throughout New England, and the owner of the business, his son had joined the business. He was an unbelievable resource. He had a plan for both his son and I to really continue the business as he started to step back. No plans of selling, but then he was approached, like so many business owners are, and was given an offer he couldn't refuse. And I think that's something that employees need to realize too, that sometimes business owners have no intention of selling, and then all of a sudden this opportunity is in front of them that, you work your whole life as an entrepreneur to build something, and someone values it, that you can't help but be like, oh wow, I have to take this, right? And so that happened, and it was a shock to all of us when it happened. And for anyone that has been through an acquisition or a merger, the due diligence period is long. So for a while, it was just myself, the CFO, the CSO that knew it was happening. And that's really hard, right? To keep running the business, knowing that something is in the process of happening that could quite literally change everything, or it couldn't happen, right? Because like they say, the deal isn't done until it's signed. Like it dies like 3 times before it actually happens. So ours actually happened, and we sold, and it was... Rich truly believed that that's the name of the owner of the business I worked for. He truly believed that the partnership that he had with the company he was selling to, that they were aligned with his vision, how we built it, that they wanted to take our model and basically apply it to their other companies that they had acquired. So that's what he loved about it, right? And so they made our executive team the executive team of the whole platform. And so it was really exciting in the beginning. Like any change, I think there was some kind of discomfort and people were nervous, but the belief was that things are going to just keep doing what we're doing. Like, let's not mess it up and let's go spread it everywhere else. And so sometimes what you think is going to happen isn't what happens. And I stayed on for about a year and a half. And honestly, despite the way that story ends with the company that we had, I wouldn't change the experience for anything. Yeah. I learned so much during that. So much what to do, so much what not to do.
Sometimes even what not to do.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You have a super successful business, which then makes some bad decisions. The next thing you know, it's not a successful business.
It's so true. And like, I think one of the biggest lessons I learned is it takes decades and so much time and energy to build a really successful team and culture and business. And it can crumble like that if you don't protect it. Right. Yeah. And that's what happened to
And it's an interesting thing, right? When you actually see big mergers and acquisitions happen, you just even like nationally, right? You see them and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, they went out of business really soon afterwards, right? The company I started with, they were around for 40 plus years. Yeah. They finally sold and it closed within 2 years. You killed a business that had been around for 40 years and had an unbelievable reputation. I think that sometimes, and this goes back to like everything that you kind of preach as a consultant in your business, it's you really have to actually have that honest discomfort, right? So I love, some of the things that are on your website and some of the things that we've discussed as well. And you actually need to approach this as not thinking you always have the right way, the right direction, but sometimes just let the people do what they're really good at and then assess from there. So what you said that you did when you first started as COO is you actually assessed the talent, right? The people that have actually worked for this company for many, many years. I tried to do the same thing when I stepped into Wilson Group as well too. To come in guns blazing and think that you're going to change everything that's been built. Why did you buy that business?
It's so true.
Like you bought the business for a reason. It was already a well-oiled machine. It was successful. To come in and think that you're going to flip the switch and make it just as successful or more successful. It's such a bold move. And I'm always surprised by companies that you're like, well, they have it all together. They're super successful. Like, why do they make those decisions, right? And it's sometimes just an interesting piece of, sometimes I feel like it's an ego where they just like think like, well, people will sink or swim. They're going to do it our way kind of a thing. But it goes to show that there is such a human element in what is being done daily in any industry. And if you think that you're going to go in and just make massive changes and it's just going to all align and work, that's not the case.
It's not. It's not. And I think that when you have the conversations about like what's working, what's not, what would you fix, all that, it doesn't mean that every idea somebody has, you're going to be like, granted, like you're not a genie in a bottle. It's not like, sure, whatever you want. But it's hearing it and understanding their perspective, sometimes to say, wow, that's great, we should try that. Or to say, so actually, I don't think you understand how this fits into the bigger picture. The reason we do that is because of this, right? And it's like, sometimes you're just telling people, no, that isn't going to change because we need to do it. But people just want to know, right? Like the idea around clarity and expectations. And honestly, from a leadership perspective, credibility. And I don't mean like what's on your resume. I mean, if you do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, that is invaluable for people, right? Because what we had that. And then with the new leadership, there was all these big things that were promised. Right? Yeah. One of the worst things they did was they got up in front of our team and they said, nothing's going to change. And my soul left my body because for the 5 years I was in that role, all we had done was evolve, right? Yeah. Change was what made us successful and we were embracing change, and change isn't a bad thing if it's managed the right way. And also, like, that's not true. Of course it's going to change, right? It's changing right now because now you are the person in front of the room for them. And so I think telling people what they want to hear, nobody wants that. They want the truth, right? And I've seen some mergers and acquisitions go really well too. I think M&A, that space has a bad rep because of your situation, because of mine, like how it happens, like what's at risk. But when you do it well and from the beginning you're like, this is going to be hard, right? Like we might run into some issues here. And we have the skills and the team that are going to get us through it. And if you keep telling us your feedback, what you're seeing, and it's collaborative, then there's nothing that we can't get through, right?
Right. I think ultimately it's like any partnership, right? You have to put egos aside and you actually have to come together and collaborate. And it is interesting to see that some of these really successful companies out there don't understand that like one little piece. So that being said, right, what I want to hear more is you left the company, right? You had an unbelievable track record. You had seen a massive amount of success. You saw it through getting purchased. Obviously, I'm sure that owner is grateful to all the work that you've done, right? He was able to probably retire off of that and live a good life. So what led you into saying, you know what, like the consulting thing was something you worked with and that's what led you to become COO, right? Like what led you to say, I'm going to open up my own consulting business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I originally, when I left the business, you know, I had an executive contract to stay for a certain amount of time, and then they were going to make some changes. And I just had this moment of like, I don't believe in this anymore, right? And I think when you lose that belief or conviction as a leader, you can't be authentic anymore. And that was really my superpower as a leader, is like I was authentic in how I showed up. And so I couldn't do that anymore. And I also felt so guilty to leave this team, right? And I was like, oh my God, my team, I can't leave them, blah, blah, blah. Yada, yada, yada. I decided to go out on my own. And it's funny because so many of the leaders in that business left shortly after, because it's like they were holding on for me, I was holding on for them. And it's like everyone was in it together because that's what a strong culture is, right? And so I watched that fallout and was like, oh my gosh, like this really is something special, what we had and what we built. And like, I want to do that again. And so I had a private equity firm reach out to me, and they basically wanted me to help them find a new business to purchase in the restoration space and basically do it again, right? Build another version of that company. And so it sounded exciting, right? And so it takes a while to find a good target. So we started looking for different businesses to buy. And then on the side, I decided to do some consulting just because that can take some time. So as I was doing this consulting for some businesses that were, you know, trying to experience certain levels of growth, they found a business for us to potentially acquire. And where I should have felt excited, I was like, oh, I think I don't want to do that anymore, right? And I had to have a kind of difficult conversation with myself because it felt so much more secure to say, okay, but this is a business. I can go be a CEO for a business, or should I really like stick with this? But the energy that I got from consulting, I would only get maybe like 20% of the time as a CEO, right? Because 100% of my time as a consultant is working with leaders and developing them and watching that domino effect of when you give leaders that are open to coaching and want to learn like skills to elevate, it impacts everyone, right? And so I'm like, okay, instead of just becoming a CEO for this business, what if I work with a lot of businesses and then, you know, have a greater impact? And so decided, you know, had the conversation with my husband. He was like, absolutely. Why wouldn't you do that? And close friends encouraging me to do so. And so that was 5 years ago, right? And I'm very fortunate that the business has grown because of word of mouth. Like I really have not, I don't have a social media presence. I don't do a lot of marketing. It's really been CEOs talking to other CEOs saying, oh, I'm really struggling with this. And then my name coming up in that conversation.
It's really impressive. Yeah. I mean, it's to have such a huge business. I mean, you're working with, and obviously we're very good friends, and you're working with Fortune 500 companies. Yeah. You're on stage speaking around the country. Yeah. Like there's a lot that you're doing, and it all comes back to the impact you have on people.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just about creating this amazing culture with people. It's not just like helping these sales organizations. It's all of that stuff, but it also leads to a really happy life for these CEOs.
So true.
And let's be honest, better numbers, better profit, more efficient, all of those different things. And I know that's a really important thing for you because culture is super, super important. And it all ties together because numbers without culture are nothing, and the other way around, and you don't have a business.
It's so true. And I think like some business owners get so kind of like they have the eye roll and you talk about culture because they think it's like, oh, it's you know, just soft and trying to make people happy. And I'm the first person to tell you it is not your job as a leader to make your team happy. It is your job to set expectations, to provide clarity, and to hold them accountable to that. And when people have that, when they have clarity, they know, if I do this, I get this. If I don't do this, this happens. That creates happiness, right? It's not your job to be like, oh, I want this to be comfortable and happy for you. It's like, no, it's your job to push them to be successful. And then that success will lead to happiness. And so I think it's just a shift around that, right? That you can have both. You can have people that really enjoy what they do and hit numbers. And this common misconception that, well, if I push them hard, then they're going to leave. Or if I hold them accountable, then I'm the bad guy. It's like, well, only if you scream at them, right? And so if people can kind of hide behind that of, well, I can't do this because that'll happen. And so it's either this way or that way. It's black or white, right? Like you either have to be a drill sergeant and not allow this, or you let people get away with murder. And I don't think that is true. And I also don't think that's the most effective way to function.
I love hearing you say that, because I think a lot of people think making a team happy is the soft stuff, right? It's like a little bit more kumbaya. It's a little bit more, trying to give them everything.
Yes.
Right. And trying to make everything so handed to you on a silver platter, right? But at the end of the day, we signed up to work, right? And I always say, I'm like, work, as fun as our job can be, it's still work. And I think that some of the best ways that you can create a really strong culture is actually by holding people accountable to a high expectation, a high level of standards. And I think that when people actually realize what they're capable of and that they're able to rise to those standards, that's when they become happier, because they actually can do something for themselves. It's nothing you're doing.
Right.
It's just you're saying, I know you're capable of doing this. I'm going to hold you accountable to do it. And then I'm going to help you and give you all the tools to support you to get to that level. But ultimately, that's when people, I think, are the most happy, because they're the most proud.
It's so true.
And I think pride is like a huge piece.
It is. And I think that people, a lot of leaders live in this space of like, they assume their team knows what they need and what they want and what's important to them. And that's a lot of the work that I do with CEOs, is like uncovering, what do you think that they know and what do you know that they know? And, this feeling of like, well, they should do this and they should be doing this. Like, says who? Have you told them that? It's like, oh, I shouldn't have to tell them that. Why? It's common sense. If there's one thing people take away from this conversation, there's no such thing as common sense. I can tell you that. We all come from different backgrounds, different experiences that lead to what you believe and value. And so if you assume that everyone shares your same beliefs, your same urgency, your same communication style, there will always be a disconnect on your team, right? And so when it comes to accountability and people say, I don't know how to do it, it starts with, well, did you set the expectation? Do they even know what you're holding them to, or are people failing your secret tests? So many people manage that way of like, oh, they're late again. It's like, well, did you ever tell them that even though it's 8:30 start, you want them there at 8:15? Right? It's like, well, they should, don't you know, everyone should be there that early. It's like, well, some people don't. But if you can't hold people accountable to something they don't know you're holding them accountable to.
So how do you mentioned the word uncoachable earlier. How do you take a leader that might be uncoachable but still wants their business to grow, hence why they hire you, and how do you work with that leader? Because someone's coachable, great. They're going to take your advice and they're going to implement it, and that's probably the easier part. Someone that's not as willing, how do you get them to be more willing and get them to execute essentially properly?
I would also piggyback off of that and say, can you spot someone who's uncoachable fairly quickly? And what are some of those traits that you're spotting?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
Really good questions. So to start, when I'm first engaging with a CEO that's looking for me to get involved with like their leadership team, I do the deep dive, which is really similar to what I talked about that I did when I first took on the role of COO, right? So it means I'm going to meet with everyone on their team. I'm going to ask them the same set of questions. I'm going to gather feedback. But prior to that, I give them language to explain to their team, like, this is meant to know what's really going on. Like, speak now or forever hold your peace. Basically, we're asking, so here's your time to tell us what's working, what's not, what are the blind spots, right? And so we gather all this information. But in that initial conversation with that CEO, I tell them, like, you are going to hear things that you hate, like things that are going to piss you off, things you disagree with. And if that alone makes you uncomfortable, this probably won't work. Right? Because it's like, if you can't even, the first step's admitting there's a problem, right? So it's like, if you can't even admit maybe something's off here, then this isn't going to work. And so I almost try to talk people out of it before I take them on as a client, because I don't want to get into a situation where, we're sure you can give me all your money and we'll talk about the same thing week over week, but that's not fun for me either, right? And so I have had clients where I've had to end or encouraged us to end the engagement by like, I think you should actually focus your time on executing the things we talk about, right? Instead of us just wasting our time doing this. But in the beginning of that, right, on the front end, to be able to explain like, this is going to be hard and uncomfortable, and you're going to have to like self-reflect, and there's a lot that's in your control here, and there's, guess what, no judgment. Like, I think that's where they're willing to trust me in the process, because when they tell me I'm struggling with this, I'm never like, wow, you are not kind, right? It's like, well, I just ask more questions like, well, why do you feel you need to talk that way? Like, what's the result you're looking for? Like, have you ever asked what they think, right? And so then it gets them to be more reflective than defensive. And I think you can't coach anyone that's in defense mode. Like, they are not willing to hear feedback. All of us can take feedback in different ways, or need to be in a different place, right? Some people can hear feedback, digest it in the moment, have a conversation. Some people need to process, right? Some people need to get really mad, and then 10 minutes later, they don't really care anymore. But you can't assume that you know these things about people, right? You have to leave the judgment at the door, not like, make sure people feel safe in the room with you before you can get their team feeling safe, right? And if you're going to shame someone or judge them of like, wow, I can't believe you did that, then like, why would they want to be vulnerable enough to be coached?
Right.
So in terms of tactical stuff, right? Because you talked a lot about they have to then do the work.
Yeah.
And that's a huge piece of anything, right? Is you're giving them advice, you're giving them coaching, and this is any type of coaching, whether it's on the field or in the boardroom, whatever it might be. They actually now have to do the additional work. Do you spell that out for them? How do you create like a plan so that they also have success when working with you?
It's customized based on the leader, right? Which I think as leaders you have to do when you are working with people on your team, right? You have to make sure that you are approaching in a way that they're going to respond to. Some people need the tough love. Some people just need a lot of encouragement and the gold stars. And so it's first uncovering like what motivates them, right? And setting the ground rules around accountability, right? So I like to start with the result we're looking for, start with the ambition and work backwards, right? So it's like working together, what are you trying to accomplish? I want my team to be able to give me hard feedback. I want us to have like really honest conversations as a team. Like, tell me what it is we're after, and then we're going to look at all the things that could get in the way of that success, right? And then build out kind of a plan of what's the first step. Because I think when executives reach out to a coach, or they have those, two CEOs talking to each other, which is allowed me to grow the business, right? Then referring to me is like, what am I going to do with this? This is such a big problem. And I think I have the ability to take something that feels really big and make it feel digestible, right? Like, make it small. So it's like, if it feels big, it usually means your first step isn't small enough. So like, when I'm starting to coach someone, it's like, okay, this is what we want to accomplish, but like, what do we want to do this week?
Yeah.
Right? What do we want to do
break
this
it down.
month?
Right.
Like,
Let's get a
action
win.
items.
yeah, let's get a win. Like, can you get through one meeting without yelling?
Right.
Like, could you just try, Or like, I want you to tell this individual that you're working on giving feedback, and like, for them to expect it, right? And like, it's a bite-sized thing where they can say, okay, I'm going to try this. And I think so much in leadership there's so many misfires because of that misalignment between intention and impact, right? And so sometimes if people don't have the language right, I don't think it's that people don't want to tell the truth, or that people don't, like, I like to believe that people are coming from a good place, right? And so sometimes the best thing to do is to just tell them, like, just state your intention, as weird or awkward as that might sound, before you say the thing. Like, hey, like, my intention here is to give you feedback to make you the best version of yourself in this position. My fear is that I'm going to make you feel bad, but I need you to know my intention is to make you better. And if there's a better way I can deliver it, you tell me, I'm all ears. But like, this is the result we're after. And then people can understand, like, oh, that's why they're doing it, right? Like,
It's that transition, like you talk about on reading on your website. it's that transition from dishonest harmony to, what do you call it? Honest discomfort.
Yep. Exactly.
And that's really magical because you're taking that something that might be fine and, going along, no problems at all. But it's just dishonest because you're not being clear.
It's a facade,
Yeah.
right? It's like that word fine is like, oh, it's fine. It's
fine.
like, is it? Like we all have a partner or a friend. It's like, oh, yeah, everything's fine. You're like, oh, no, now I'm in trouble, right? And so it's like, what are the things that live under the surface that like, just because you ignore them doesn't mean they go away.
Yeah.
So like, it exists whether we want to talk about it or not. So you're better off uncovering it. But I think it's that people fear how they're going to make people feel if they say the hard thing, right? Like, because we judge ourselves on our intentions, but we judge everyone else on how they make us feel. And so if you realize that, right, that like you can tell yourself anything like, well, they didn't like what I had to say, but like I know, like my intention was good there because I did this. It's like, okay, it doesn't change. Two things can be true at once. Like, yes, your intention was good, but the impact wasn't good, right? And so with that idea of dishonest harmony and honest discomfort is realizing that even though it's uncomfortable, like it's going to get you to a better place, right? So this dishonest harmony, this facade over authenticity, right? So it's what that looks like is like, you're in a team meeting and everyone's like nodding like, yep, sounds good, boss. And then they leave the room and they're like, oh, this guy, and like, so it's like, we're pretending everything's fine, but or someone on the team is a problem and no one wants to talk about it. Right. But the thing is like, you are communicating whether you say something or not, what you tolerate. And like what you tolerate, you normalize as a leader. And so there's so much damage that happens when you live in this dishonest harmony, right? Because it's like people are watching you make decisions that they're like, that ain't right. Why are they allowed? And so then you're losing credibility on top of like the damage that was already happening within the organization.
How do you make those corrections? How do you implement things that help?
So the first thing you have to do is like admit that they exist, right? And sometimes it's like people are afraid to talk about things unless they have a solution. And I think there's actually so much value in like sitting in it sometimes. It's like, wow, yeah, that's bad. What are we going to do? Let's think about it, right? It's like, oh, wow, we just said it, like, and we're all still alive. We did it, and humor is a big thing for me. Like, I think you'll see me in team meetings if I'm facilitating a meeting and someone's being really vulnerable and trying to like share something that's really difficult to say or give feedback up, right? Like it feels like you are doing this, right? I will literally be like, that was amazing. I'm so proud of you. That must have been so hard, right? And it just kind of is like, okay, all right. And gets them to realize like, I did it. And also like celebrate it, right? And so I think the honest discomfort has to happen in a place where there's safety, and it has to start small, right? So it's like, if you know yourself as a leader that when you hear feedback, you get defensive, do not tomorrow go into your leadership meeting and be like, okay, everybody, let me have it. Tell me what you think. Because as soon as you start
a big fight.
because as soon as you start getting defensive, then people are going to say, well, that's why I don't tell you anything, right?
Yeah.
But if you can just say, I want to ask questions and I'm just going to listen, right? And you take notes as people are talking and they see, oh, they actually did just listen. They didn't fight with me. Guess what? That's one more step in the right direction of like, they all are going to get to a point.
You don't always have to have the answer.
It's so true.
If they can give you any piece of, whether it be criticism or whether it be just what they're going through, you don't always have to have either an opinion or a solve for them.
It's so true.
Which is tricky. So you were able to take tough leaders and help them transform their businesses. You're able to take people that are open to feedback. What are the type of clients you're looking for now, or like who do you love working with the most?
It's funny. I work in so many different industries, so many different types of businesses, and I find that the ones that I really feel like there's a huge impact is if they're going through some sort of transition, right? So it's like either growth, could be a transition. So we were small, now we're big. Or I am thinking I want to take a step back. Who's going to come in, right? Or we actually need this whole other layer of leadership that we didn't have before, or an acquisition or something like that. And clients that are willing to say, this is going to be different, and what we did before might not work anymore, right? Yeah. Like those are the types of clients that are willing to say, I got to look at this, and the people I need to look at it with are my team. And the commonality between all my clients is that they have humans, right? Like the human component of this is so critical. And I think that the work that I do with individuals is meant to translate outside of the workplace, right? I think if you're invested in helping people as human beings versus like who they are to you in their role, there's such a deeper connection, and like there's such a deeper value that then they attribute to the organization. And when I do these introduction deep dives, right, the first thing I say is, you are so lucky that you have a leader that cares enough to ask what you think, right? Like I put them up so high for doing it because they should be, right? They should be celebrated for doing that, because so many leaders don't. And that alone is like very disarming for the team. I'm like, oh, you're right. I'm like, so you don't want to waste this opportunity. This person has invested in someone coming in to say, tell me everything. What am I missing? What are my blind spots? And yeah, some people are a little, more closed off, but I think, when people are like, well, how do you actually get them to tell you the truth? It's like, well, because people want to tell the truth. They just don't have an outlet. They don't have the words, or they don't think you care, right? And so determining that, and they realize I'm just gathering information and also setting the expectation up front of what I'm going to do with that information.
Right. Or they're nervous about what the outcome will be if they do be too honest.
Bingo.
But it's also the way that you're laying that foundation and saying that, it's also, there's so much truth to that. So whether the leader of that organization was lacking tact or had some tough approaches in the past, they did recognize that there was an issue.
Exactly.
So, and they are investing in bettering themselves and bettering their team. And a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, like you said, it translates into outside of the work life. Yeah. I hear all the things that you're saying, and I'm like, that would make you a better partner in your marriage or in your relationships. It will make you a better parent if you actually speak that way. True. If you set clear expectations, if you actually tell people what your intentions are, right? All those things just make you a better friend, right? Like a better human being. So I think it's such good stuff that if someone can actually invest in your services and bring you into their organization, you're really making such a huge impact beyond their day-to-day.
Beyond just the huge increase in ROI, if they
totally.
That's obviously
beyond
exciting.
money.
But
because that's exactly, it's like
and
it does lead to that. Like the results are real, and like everybody's happier when you're winning, right? So it's like, find a way to win, and then you protect it. And I think knowing that what you're after is not perfection, it's authenticity, is like so critical in understanding what this work is and like how it can impact you. And I think, if you are listening to this as a leader and like, oh, but it's different for me, or like I can't do that, or my team wouldn't understand that, maybe, but what if they do, right? And like I think you don't know unless you ask, but I can't stress enough, don't ask unless you aren't going to listen, right? And that doesn't mean granting wishes. It just means like having the conversation and circling back on things, right? Like when I gather all this feedback, I make it very clear to every person I meet with, I'm going to review this, I'm going to put it together, and like, these are my findings, these are my recommendations. I'm going to meet with the CEO. We're going to then meet with you. They know what's happening. They know the next 5 steps, so they don't have to sit in that wonder and worry of like, what's next? Yeah. I was just so vulnerable.
What is she going to do?
I gave so much. What is she going to do with it? Like, is it going to be blasted on a billboard, or like, they know, right?
Give clarity on what's going to happen.
Exactly. And so it's like, people just want clarity around what you expect from them, how you're going to handle things. With all the businesses, all the teams I've worked with, no one has ever been like, you know what? I want less clarity. I want less clarity in my role. I want less clarity in like the future, how I can make more money. It's like, give them a path, right? And this trap we all fall into of assuming people know what we want. Like, I think the power of this work is like, you have so much more control than you think.
Right.
I think one of my biggest takeaways from all of the conversation that we've been able to have today, because there's so much good stuff in this. Like you said, any leader that's listening, they're going to be able to take something away based on their current leadership style. But to me, one of the biggest takeaways is when asking for feedback and really digging deep into what your staff feels and what your staff thinks, one of the best opportunities is to provide clarity. You said this at the very beginning, but sometimes you're going to actually hear that people are thinking that things should be done a certain way, and all you have to actually do is explain to them why it's done the other way. And then they'll be like, oh, that makes a ton of sense, right? And now they trust in you so much more because they didn't realize that it was being done a certain way for a bigger picture idea, or for maybe efficiency's sake, or whatever the case may be. I love those types of conversations within our team, because to me, I'm like, the minute we're able to explain to each other why we're doing what we're doing, because when you're doing different roles, you don't always understand why someone's doing it a certain way. From an outsider's perspective, you can have a little bit of judgment on how someone's doing something or the decisions they're making. But asking a question is my favorite thing, right? Asking questions and hearing the way other people's brains work allows you to really, truly understand where people are coming from, and then correct it. Correct the course, not correct the person, right? But correct the course of like, well, this is why it's actually done that way. Or, wow, you opened up my eyes to like such a good idea. Maybe we do it that way. And I think that ultimately that is just a better symbiotic relationship in any work environment, whether it's a small company like ours or whether it's these huge companies that you're working with.
Yeah, it's like the why behind it, right? Like if you don't start there for people, and I think leaders can say, oh, it doesn't matter. Like they just need to focus on this. It's like, no, people want to understand how they fit into it, right? If you want people to feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, then like paint the full picture for them. Don't just assume that they know. So I think there's like so much value in curiosity and asking questions and really listening. Like it's hard for people to ask a question and not respond with a statement. Right? Like, it's like, oh, well, we do this. Like sometimes it's better just leave space. Let people get it out, because if they feel you're defensive, they're not going to be.
Shut down.
They're going to shut down. They're not going to talk about it, right? And so let them know that like I want to listen, right? And I think another really important piece of that is set the expectation of like, if I misstep as a leader again, I'm giving you permission to call me out on it, right? That's how you really see change. Because we talk about these little things, how you're going to implement them, but like anything, it's clarity and expectations. It's like, hey, I know in the past I've come across as this, right? Or I know in the past these meetings have gone this way. It is my intention that we change that. And if you see me, falling back into bad behavior, please tell me, right? I'm asking for you to tell me. Now that person is like, oh, they want to know. And so they don't have the fear associated with like protecting that dishonest harmony, right? They're like, no, he wants me to tell him if he's doing that thing. And because it's coming from a place to help, right? And I think, when you implement a process and people aren't following it, it's like, tell them what's going to happen if they don't do it, right? Like, what's the consequence? And consequence doesn't have to be extreme. I'm not talking about like you're fired or anything. It's like, hey, if this happens, then we're going to have to start having weekly meetings on this to make sure that your information's in the system, or to make sure that you're following up like you said you would. But it's all geared towards setting it up front so there's no emotion around it at the end. Because if it's really clear up front, then there's no room for excuses. It's just like, yeah, I didn't do that. Right. It's like, okay, so you know what happens now, and we move forward, right? Like the change without the blame is such a critical piece of, I think, like lasting change in an organization.
I love that. There's so many good nuggets here. This is great.
This is fun.
The change without the blame.
I know. That is good. So one last thing as we wrap up. Okay. So whether it be about team dysfunction or leadership or succession plans or mergers and acquisitions or whatever it is, what's one thing that you would like to tell our listeners, one big takeaway before we wrap it up?
Oh, it's so hard to choose. I think if you can incorporate the question, what's the result that I'm looking for, before any conversation you have, it will change your perspective so much on how often there's a disconnect between intention and impact. Right? So like if you say like, when I go into a conversation, what's the result I'm looking for? Do I want to piss this person off? Do I want them to quit? Or am I trying to give them feedback to make them better? Okay, if that's the result I want, how can I say it in a way that it'll get that impact versus, well, it was true. right? Like, it's easy to say, well, yeah, I told him that, but it was true. It's like, yeah, but you lost your opportunity to actually get the result, because how you approach something is going to take a different path based on the result that you want.
Yeah.
Does that
It's
make
not
sense?
what you say, it's how you say it, right?
It's true.
So I love that one. I think that's by far one of my favorite takeaways as well too. You've given us a lot. This is so good. I mean I'm ready to hire you. Like I mean
Done.
I feel like anyone listening to this, it's like, why wouldn't we be going to realconsulting.com?
Thank
right?
you.
It's real. It's RIEHL consulting.com.
Very good, Ryan.
EHL
It's also
consulting.com.
a good play on words.
It
Like you've got
is.
the perfect last
It
name, right?
is.
Get
She
real
has the
with
real
Jess Riehl.
method. Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
It
But Jess, it's been amazing.
love it.
Obviously,
Thank you so much for having me.
We look up to you as a leader and a consultant and friend and all the above. So
Feeling is mutual. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you for coming
thanks for
on.
coming.
All right.